There are truths in life that people avoid, not because they are complicated, but because they are painful. Quiet truths, the kind that do not announce themselves, but slowly reveal their weight over time. Most people spend their lives distracted, busy, surrounded by noise, constantly moving, so they never have to sit with these thoughts. Because when the noise fades and the mind becomes still, reality begins to speak. And what it says is not always comforting. Stoicism does not try to hide these truths. It does not soften them or reshape them to feel better. It presents them as they are, clear, direct, unavoidable. Because only when you face reality fully can you begin to understand it. And only when you understand it can you gain control over yourself. Some of these truths may feel heavy. You may resist them. You may try to ignore them. But deep down you already know them. You have felt them in quiet moments, late at night, when everything slows down and there's nothing left to distract you. This is where honesty begins. Not the kind you show the world, but the kind you cannot escape within yourself. This video is not meant to comfort you. It is meant to show you the truth. The kind that changes how you see your life, how you see others, and how you see yourself. Because once you truly understand these truths, you cannot go back to who you were before. You begin to see things differently, more clearly, more honestly. And from that clarity, a different kind of strength is built. Not loud, not visible, but deeply real. So take a moment, slow down, and listen carefully. Because these are the truths nobody tells you. At some point in life, you realize something difficult. Something that changes how you see everything. No one is coming to save you. Not at the perfect moment. Not when things fall apart. Not when you feel lost, confused, or overwhelmed. This is not a negative truth. But it feels heavy when you first accept it. Because for a long time, we are taught to believe otherwise. That someone will appear. That things will somehow fix themselves. That support will always arrive exactly when we need it. But life does not work that way. And deep down, you already know this. You have felt it in moments when things became silent, when the people you expected support from were not there, when the situation did not improve on its own, when you were left alone with your thoughts. Those moments are not accidents. They are reminders, quiet signals from reality showing you something important. That responsibility, ultimately, belongs to you. This realization can feel isolating. It can feel like the weight of everything is placed on your shoulders. But there is something deeper within it, something powerful. Because the moment you stop waiting for someone else to change your situation, you begin to change it yourself. You stop delaying action. You stop depending on external support to move forward. You begin to rely on your own decisions, your own discipline, your own direction. And slowly, something shifts. You become stronger. Not because life becomes easier, but because you stop expecting it to be. Avoidance. A quiet way of escaping responsibility. Hoping that something outside of you will solve what only you can face. But when you remove that expectation, clarity appears. You see your situation for what it is, without illusion, without false hope. And from that clarity, action becomes possible. There is also a kind of freedom here, because when you stop expecting others to carry your weight, you stop being disappointed by them. You stop placing your progress in someone else's hands. You take it back, completely. This does not mean you must do everything alone. It means you no longer depend on others to begin. You move forward regardless. You act even when support is not present. You continue even when it feels difficult. And in doing so, you build something real. Self-reliance. The ability to stand on your own. To think clearly. To act without waiting, to continue without reassurance. This is where strength begins. Not in comfort, but in acceptance. The acceptance that no one is coming. And because of that, you must become the person who moves forward anyway. This truth does not weaken you. It removes illusion. And once illusion is gone, what remains is clarity. For a long time, you believe people are watching you, judging you, thinking about your actions, your mistakes, your choices. You replay conversations in your mind. You analyze how you were perceived. You question whether you said the right thing, whether you acted the right way. And slowly, this creates pressure, a quiet tension that follows you in everyday life. But there is a truth most people realize too late. People are not thinking about you as much as you believe. Not because they do not care at all, but because they are focused on themselves, their own problems, their own thoughts, their own insecurities, just like you. The same way you spend time thinking about your life, they are doing the same. And this changes everything. Because the pressure you feel is not coming from them. It is coming from your own mind, from the assumption that you are constantly being observed, evaluated, judged. But in reality, most people move on quickly. They forget small details. They forget conversations. They forget moments you are still thinking about. What feels significant to you is often temporary to them. And once you begin to understand this, something inside you starts to loosen. The constant need to appear perfect begins to fade. The fear of being judged begins to weaken. You realize you have been carrying a weight that was never truly there. This does not mean you stop caring completely. It means you stop overvaluing external opinion. You ask yourself, what do I think about my actions? Are they aligned with my values? Am I acting with clarity and intention? These questions matter more than external judgment, because they are within your control. There is also a quiet freedom in accepting this truth. When you stop believing that everyone is watching you, you begin to act more naturally, more honestly, more directly. You stop adjusting your behavior to match imagined expectations. You stop holding back out of fear. You stop overthinking every decision, and in that space, your mind becomes lighter, clearer, less burdened. This is not about ignoring people. It is about seeing reality clearly, understanding that most of the pressure you feel is self-created. And once you see that, you can begin to let it go. People will think what they think, sometimes positively, but most of the time they are simply thinking about themselves, just as you have been doing. And when you accept this fully, you stop living for their attention. There is a truth that is difficult to accept, because it removes blame, it removes excuses, it removes the comfort of pointing outward. And that truth is this: most of your suffering does not come from the world. It comes from within you. Not from what happens, but from how you think about what happens. This is not easy to hear, because it challenges something deep. The belief that your pain is caused entirely by external events, by other people, by circumstances, by situations you could not control. And while these things can affect you, they are not the full source of your suffering. The real source is the interpretation that follows. A situation happens, and instantly, the mind begins to create meaning. It labels the event. It builds a story. It repeats that story again and again. And over time, that story becomes your experience. Not the event itself, but the way you think about it. This is where suffering grows, in repetition, in overthinking, in attaching meaning that may not even be true. You replay moments. You imagine different outcomes. You question what you could have done differently. And with each repetition, the feeling becomes stronger, heavier, more real. But nothing has actually changed. Only your thoughts have. Stoicism brings attention to this pattern, not to blame you, but to show you something powerful. If your thoughts can create suffering, they can also reduce it. This is where control exists. Situation, but in changing how you respond to it internally. When you begin to observe your thinking, you start to notice the patterns, the assumptions, the exaggerations, the unnecessary conclusions, and slowly you create distance from them. You realize that not every thought is accurate, not every feeling is permanent, not every interpretation is true. This awareness changes your relationship with pain. Instead of being consumed by it, you begin to understand it. You see where it starts, how it grows, and how it can be reduced. There is also a form of responsibility here, not the kind that creates guilt, but the kind that creates power. Because when you accept that your mind plays a role in your suffering, you also accept that your mind can change it. You are no longer completely dependent on external conditions to feel better. You begin to work internally, quietly, consistently, and over time, your reactions become lighter. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotional weight begins to reduce. Not because life becomes perfect, but because your mind becomes more stable. This truth is not meant to hurt you. It is meant to free you. Because once you understand where your suffering truly comes from, you stop searching for solutions in the wrong places, and you begin to find them where they have always been. Time does not announce itself. It does not ask for attention. It does not remind you of what it is taking. It simply moves, quietly, constantly, without pause, and while you are distracted, while you are focused on daily concerns, while you believe there is always more time, it continues forward, taking moments with it, moments you will never experience again. This is one of the most difficult truths to face, because it is not sudden. It is gradual, almost invisible. You do not feel time leaving in a single instant. You notice it later, when something has already passed, when a phase of your life is gone, when a moment becomes a memory, when a person is no longer present in the same way they once were, and in those moments, there is a quiet realization that nothing stays, not situations, not people, not even the version of yourself that exists today. Everything is moving, everything is changing, everything is slowly being taken by time. Most people avoid thinking about this because it feels heavy. It creates discomfort. It forces you to confront something you cannot control. But Stoicism does not avoid this truth. It brings it into focus, not to create fear, but to create awareness. Because when you truly understand that time is limited, your perspective begins to shift. You stop treating your days casually. You stop delaying what matters. You stop assuming there will always be another opportunity. You begin to see things more clearly, more meaningful. Moments become more valuable. Your attention becomes more intentional. There is also a quiet sadness in this awareness, because you begin to recognize how much has already passed. How many moments you did not fully experience. How much time was spent on things that did not matter. And this realization can feel heavy. But it is also necessary, because without it, nothing changes. You continue moving without awareness, repeating patterns, wasting time without realizing its value. But when you become aware, you begin to live differently. Not perfectly, but more consciously. You start choosing where your time goes. You reduce what is unnecessary. You focus on what truly matters, and in doing so, your life becomes more aligned, not longer, but deeper, more intentional, more real. In the end, time will continue moving, whether you notice it or not. It will continue taking moments, quietly, without resistance. But your awareness of it changes how you experience life. It reminds you that this moment, right now, is not permanent. There is a truth that no one likes to think about. Yet it exists quietly in the background of every relationship. You will lose people you love. Not all at once, not always suddenly, but inevitably, in ways you cannot fully predict, and often in ways you are never completely prepared for. Sometimes it happens through distance. People change. Lives move in different directions. Conversations become less frequent. The connection slowly fades, until one day, it no longer exists in the same way. Other times, it happens more directly, more permanently. And in those moments, the absence feels heavy. Not loud, but quiet. A silence that remains where something meaningful once existed. This is the nature of life. Everything is temporary. Every connection, every moment, every shared experience. And while this truth can feel painful, avoiding it does not protect you from it. Stoicism does not turn away from this reality. It asks you to see it clearly, not to create sadness, but to create awareness. Because when you understand that nothing is guaranteed, your perspective begins to shift. You stop taking people for granted. You become more present in your interactions. You listen more carefully. You appreciate small moments that would otherwise pass unnoticed. There is a depth that comes from this awareness, a quiet appreciation for what exists now, because you understand it will not always be there. At the same time, this truth teaches something else. The importance of not attaching your entire stability to something temporary. Because relationships are unimportant. but because they are not permanent. When your emotional foundation depends entirely on others, their absence becomes overwhelming. It feels like losing a part of yourself. But when your foundation is internal, when your sense of stability is built within you, you are able to experience connection without losing yourself in it. You can care deeply without becoming completely dependent. You can appreciate fully without ignoring reality. This does not remove the pain of loss, but it changes how you carry it. It becomes something you understand, not something that completely breaks you. In the end, losing people is not something you can avoid, but you can choose how you live while they are present. You can choose to be aware, to be present, to value what exists now, because one day, without warning, it will become a memory. Comfort feels safe, predictable, easy to stay within. It does not demand much from you. It does not challenge you. It allows you to remain exactly where you are. And for a while, this feels peaceful. There is no pressure, no discomfort, no urgency to change. But beneath that surface, something else is happening. Slowly, quietly, almost without notice, your potential begins to fade. Not all at once, not in a way that is obvious, but gradually, through repetition, through inaction, through choosing ease when effort is required. This is the hidden cost of comfort. It does not feel harmful in the moment, but over time, it creates distance between who you are and who you could become. Every time you avoid difficulty, you weaken your ability to face it. Every time you delay effort, you make it harder to begin. And slowly, a pattern forms, a habit of choosing what is easy instead of what is necessary. At first, this feels like relief, but eventually, it becomes limitation. You begin to feel it in small ways, a lack of progress, a sense of stagnation, a quiet awareness that you are not moving forward, and that awareness becomes difficult to ignore. Stoicism does not reject comfort completely, but it warns against becoming dependent on it, because growth does not happen in ease, it happens in effort, in discipline, in facing what is difficult rather than avoiding it. There is a different kind of strength that comes from this, not immediate, not always visible, but real. The strength to act when you do not feel like it. The strength to continue when it becomes uncomfortable. The strength to choose discipline over temporary relief. This is where potential begins to return, not for sudden change, but through consistent effort. Small actions, repeated daily, moving you slowly away from stagnation and toward growth. There is also a shift in awareness. You begin to see comfort differently, not as something to avoid completely, but as something to manage carefully. Something that must not control your decisions, because when comfort becomes the priority, progress disappears. And when progress disappears, so does your sense of direction. The question is simple, not what feels easiest, but what moves you forward, because time will pass either way, and one day, you will look back at the version of yourself that chose comfort over growth, and you will understand what it cost you. Fear rarely arrives in the form of reality. It comes as imagination, as possibility, as a quiet voice in your mind showing you what could go wrong, and at first, it feels harmless. Just a thought, just a brief concern. But then you stay with it, you follow it, you begin to expand it. And slowly it grows into something larger, something heavier, something that begins to feel real. You imagine outcomes that have not happened. You prepare for situations that may never come. Not because of what is in front of you, but because of what exists in your mind. This is how fear takes control, not through reality, but through repetition. The more you think about it, the stronger it becomes. The more attention you give it, the more influence it has over you. And eventually, it begins to shape your decisions. You avoid certain actions. You delay opportunities. You hold yourself back, not because you are unable, but because you are imagining failure. This is the hidden weight of fear. It limits your life without ever needing to become real. Stoicism brings clarity to this pattern. It reminds you that most of what you fear never actually happens. And even when something difficult does happen, it is rarely as overwhelming as your mind predicted, because reality is direct. It is immediate. It requires action. But imagination stretches endlessly. It builds layers. It creates a version of reality that is far heavier than the truth. When you begin to see this clearly, something changes. You stop treating every thought as a warning. You begin to question it. You ask, is this real? Or is this something I am creating? This pause is important, because it creates distance between you and the fear. It allows you to see it without being consumed by it. And in that space, control returns. You begin to act despite the fear, not because it disappears, but because you understand it. You see that it is not always a signal of danger, but often a reflection of uncertainty. And uncertainty is part of life. It cannot be removed, but it can be faced. Over time, this builds confidence. Not loud confidence, but quiet certainty. The knowledge that you can move forward even when your mind creates doubt. That you can act even when fear is present. And this changes everything. Because once fear loses its control, your possibilities expand. You stop limiting yourself based on imagined outcomes. You begin to experience life more directly, more fully, more honestly. Fear will always exist in some form, but most of it will remain exactly where it began. There is a moment that comes to everyone, sooner or later, when all distractions fade, when the noise of the world grows distant, when applause, recognition, and validation no longer matter, and you are left completely alone with yourself. At first, this thought can feel terrifying, because we are conditioned to seek comfort in others, approval from friends, praise from family, validation from society. We live as if our worth is defined externally, yet the truth is far different. Stoicism teaches that no one can carry the weight of your life for you. No one can make the choices that matter on your behalf. No one can feel your pain or bear your responsibility. And the reality is simple. Eventually you will face yourself alone, alone with your thoughts, alone with your fears, alone with your dreams and your failures. In this solitude lies a truth most avoid. Everything you have been running from must be confronted internally. The doubts, the regrets, the insecurities, the unfulfilled potential. You can pretend externally, you can wear masks, you can seek constant distraction, but eventually the masks fall, and you are left with nothing but your own mind. This moment is inevitable, and it is essential, because in facing yourself alone, you find clarity. You understand what is truly yours, what matters, what is worth fighting for. The fears that seemed overwhelming shrink in the absence of external noise. The illusions of failure dissolve when you recognize the growth that has been silently building. The judgments of others lose their weight, because you see the power of your you. Own decisions. Stoicism does not glorify loneliness for its own sake, but it teaches that strength is forged in solitude. Because it is only when you face yourself alone that you understand who you truly are, who you want to be, who you are willing to become. In this moment of confrontation, the path forward becomes undeniable. It is no longer dictated by fear, or by what others think, or by the fleeting comforts of distraction. Your values shine clearly. Your purpose becomes unmistakable. You learn that all external chaos is temporary. Only the work you do within yourself remains. Your discipline, your reflection, your internal growth. And this is liberation. To walk alone without fear. To make choices rooted in principle. To accept responsibility fully for your life. The solitude is not empty. It is filled with understanding, filled with power, filled with the clarity that allows you to live intentionally. Because the truth is, when the world fades away and distractions disappear, your life becomes yours entirely. And that is when the Stoic mastery begins. No mask, no distraction, no avoidance. Only you, alone, facing your choices, accepting your fears, embracing your potential, and realizing that your inner strength, cultivated over time, is enough to carry you through anything. Solitude, once feared, becomes the greatest teacher, because only in it do you discover the truth. Everything you need is already within. The world may change, people may leave, circumstances may collapse, but your inner fortitude, your reflection, your discipline, your calm, these are permanent. And in this final confrontation with yourself, you awaken to the ultimate Stoic lesson: control your mind, and you control everything that truly matters.